High-definition news for Thursday, September 24th, 2015. I'm Jeff Kaufman.
Mr. Speaker, the Pope of the Holy See.
Pope Francis has become the first leader of the world's Roman Catholics to address a joint meeting of the United States Congress, and he proved he knows how to put an audience in the palm of his hand.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, honorable members of the Congress, dear friends, I am most grateful for your invitation to address this joint session of Congress in the land of the free at the home of the brave.
The Pope touched on several themes that have been central to his papacy. As he has throughout his visit to the U.S., he called himself a son of immigrants and praised the U.S.'s history as a nation of immigrants and a land of dreams. Then he seemed to comment on the debate currently swirling around the immigration issue, especially in the presidential campaign.
In recent centuries, millions of people came to this land to pursue the dream of building a future in freedom. We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners.
Francis quoted Martin Luther King, and he delivered a not very subtle call against abortion.
The Golden Rule also reminds us of our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of its development.
He also urged an end to the death penalty, and he called on the U.S. to use some of its wealth to care for the less fortunate. Spectacle has been the hallmark of the Pope's visit to the U.S., but there have also been some small moments. Here's one. Before his address to the House chamber this morning, Francis made the traditional courtesy call on the Speaker of the House in his ceremonial office. Any day of the week, Speaker John Boehner is a formidable presence with a quick temper in the political trenches. He was in position waiting for the Pope to arrive, and the man second in line behind the Vice President in the line of succession if anything happens to the President was as fidgety as a schoolboy.
Good.
He shifted from one foot to the other, adjusted his tie several times, clapped his hands, looked at the ceiling, tried to make small talk with the news photographers, didn't know what to do with his hands. Finally, Francis swept into the room with a posse of bishops, and you could see the relief on Boehner's face. The Speaker made fun of his own tie, and then reporters were let out of the room so the Pope and the Speaker could have some private time. After the ceremony yesterday in which Pope Francis officially elevated California's Father Junipero Serra to sainthood, it was to the Pope-mobile. Francis rode through the streets of Washington waving to the crowds that lined the sidewalks. At one point, a 5-year-old girl from Los Angeles named Sophie Cruz squeezed through the barricades and ran toward the Pope. She did not get far. She was scooped up by a Secret Service agent. But Francis saw her and motioned to have her brought to him. Sophie Cruz got a hug and a kiss from the Pope, and then she did what she had intended to do all along. She handed Francis a letter, and then she told us what was in it.
My parents are immigrants from Oaxaca, Mexico. Pope Francis, I want to tell you that my heart is sad, and I would like to ask you to speak with the President and the Congress in legalizing my parents, because every day I am scared that one day they will take them away from me.
Sophie was born in the U.S., but her parents are from Mexico and are undocumented. Their congressional representative invited Sophie and her parents to Washington to deliver her message to the Pope. 5-year-old girls don't pose much of a threat to the Pope, but the Secret Service and local police in the cities that Francis is visiting on his American tour are keeping an eye on the crowds as the Pope presses the flesh. New York Police Commissioner and former LAPD Chief Bill Bratton is not watching the crowds, he's watching the Pope. He and some of his officers are in Washington to study every move the Pope makes to get a sense of his rhythms so they can predict when he's going to make a break for the crowd to shake some hands.
As expected, he's very spontaneous. That I was watching him work that line this morning. You think he was running for office, that he was slowly going down that line, and so I think we can expect what was unexpected, but it's not going to be expected. He's going to work the crowd.
But Bratton admits he cannot control the Pope.
What the Pope wants, he gets. It's that simple. That we have watched countless hours of video of him, and country after country to get a sense of his rhythm, his motions, and so we're pretty prepared for it, and that closeness that he seeks to bring to his flock. If it were not to happen, I think there'd be disappointment, and I don't think this Pope wants to disappoint.
Bratton has pulled 1,000 not yet graduated cadets out of the New York Police Academy to help with traffic control when the Pope arrives in New York later today. Francis will address the United Nations General Assembly tomorrow afternoon, Philadelphia on Saturday, and then on Sunday, he's wheels up for Rome. Here's some catch-up for your Thursday breakfast. This is some of what might have got past you since yesterday. L.A. County Sheriff and former Long Beach Police Chief Jim McDonnell has made a deal with federal immigration authorities to allow ICE agents into L.A. County jails to look for inmates eligible to be deported. McDonnell says immigration agents will have access only to inmates who've committed violent crimes. It's been only 4 months since the Board of Supervisors kicked ICE agents out of the jails after years of public complaints about racial profiling. We told you last week about the long-delayed maintenance project on the 5-mile pipeline that carries treated wastewater from the Hyperion sewage treatment plant in Playa del Rey out to sea, and that because of that project, Hyperion would have to use a much shorter pipeline. It's dumping the gunk 1 mile offshore instead of 5. Heal the Bay warned last week that a mile offshore is not far enough for the ocean to dilute any pollution before tides carry it back to the beach. Looks like Heal the Bay was right. The county health department closed Dockweiler State Beach yesterday after debris began washing up on the beach. Debris like tampon applicators and hypodermic needles. Dockweiler will stay closed until the pipeline repair is finished sometime in early November. From the High Definition News Data Desk, Long Beach's unemployment rate is at a 7-year low, but it's still 2 points higher than the national jobless rate. In August, the unemployment rate in the LBC was 7.6%. That's pretty close to where it was right when the Great Recession began. Mayor Robert Garcia says the figure validates what he calls the city's holistic approach to business development. But Long Beach's August jobless rate was almost a point higher than LA County's at 6.9% and California's at 6.1%. The national unemployment rate in August was 5.1%. Hey, weren't there some people wandering across the landscape running for president? Even Donald Trump had to surrender the media spotlight to Pope Francis, but he snatched part of it back yesterday in South Carolina to announce that he'll reveal his tax plan next week. He promises that it will include something he referred to as details. Now you know what we know. I'm Jeff Kaufman, High Definition News.